All right, everybody, welcome back to my channel, Psychic Soul Senses. Today, we are going to do the last video of Jerry Marzinsky's research. Today is the portion of the interview with Ryder on Raised by Giants with Lynn Monet, is her name. And I know I said it right because I just got done listening to it. She is awesome. She's an author. Um, she has many books out. One of them includes Heaven, something about heaven. I don't know what all the books are. You can go check her out and research her and find out some more stuff if you're interested. She is very interesting. She worked with a lot of end of life care people, and she is able to see frequencies like I've told you guys that I can see the plasma energy of beings. She can see that. She can see the auras. She can do all that too. It's interesting. And she's able to witness the transformation from death to, the soul transferring over. I think that's cool. She's wrote about it. Um, there's more people. I love being able to find out about more people in they're writing about it and they're talking about it that have the gifts that I have. It makes me feel less lonely and less like other people, like because it makes me feel less abnormal. Okay, so anyways, here we go. We're gonna jump right into it so we can get this over with. And Don and I don't want to take too much of his video. If you want to see more of it, just go over to Raised by Giants and check it out. So I want to go ahead and do my shout outs real quick to Beth Riz. Shout out to Jeebus Crisp. Shout out to Penny Press and a couple others out there. Thank you for showing up. This is for educational purposes only. And I would like to thank Ryder Lee over at Raised by Giants for the work that he does in getting this information out. Thank you. Here we go. All right. Now she was just introduced and brought in, so.
Hospital, what did you experience while working there?
I did. I went back actually later in life to further my degree as a nurse, and I had to do rotation in my psychiatric class in the psychiatric ward, and we were placed in there for a week, and multiple things occurred. And as I was listening to Jerry talking about reading off his client interview, for lack of a better word, a lot of that started to bring up some other things that I remember too. But I've always had a gift of seeing spirits. I have the gift of second sight ever since I was little. So when I went into this setting with the classroom, and Jerry's heard the story a couple of times, the thing that really hit home for me, again, I had never had the experience in a psychiatric setting. I'd always been in end-of-life care or med surg or something like that. Urology was another specialty that I had. Being in the end-of-life care, I would see people that would be considered hallucinating as they were getting closer to their time of death, which was not hallucinations. And you were mentioning about the good and the bad. And these people would hear good things. They'd see their parents, they'd see their loved ones, they'd talk about seeing them, and they'd be medicated the same way for hallucinations. So seeing it from a different perspective, as there is a light side, talking about paranormal as a blanketed topic, there is a white side and a darker side to that. So being placed into the situation in
I love how she explains the difference because that's where people back off of the paranormal. They put boxes around it. They don't want to research anymore because they blanket the whole thing. But the deal is there is a light side of paranormal and a dark side of paranormal. You can deal with positive entities and negative entities. I've done it.
In one of the psychiatric hospitals that I was placed in, it was the very first day. We walked in, there were a group of 8 nurses with a teacher, and the teacher had left all of us student nurses standing there while she went in to get our assignments. And there was a young woman that was there, looked to be in her early 20s, kind of chunky, real short hair. She had on like a spaghetti straps with a midriff, with her midriff showing and short shorts on. And she walked over to the group and she pointed at me and she said, "You can help me. I know you can." And of course, I'm in that moment wanting to be Lynn, the student nurse, not Lynn, the weirdo. So I'm like, "Oh, please don't let her be talking to me." And, I'm like, "Oh my gosh." So I just kept my mouth shut. And fortunately, the teacher came through and she ushered us out. She said, "Don't make eye contact. Don't talk to anybody." And just to back up a little bit, this particular area was the intake area. So we actually had to sign papers that if we got hit with something or bitten or something happened to us while we were in there, somebody assaulted us, that we couldn't hold the facility responsible.
Was this a state-run psychiatric ward?
It was, yes, as a matter of fact, this one was. There were a couple of, and a lot of them are state-run. There are very few. They don't allow the student nurses really to come into the private ones. So, you kind of go into the state-run ones. But
So I want to bring that up and
Okay.
emphasize, because I've worked in a number of psychiatric facilities and they all do pretty much the same thing. They will not allow people in there to see what's going on.
Yeah,
Researchers are not allowed in there.
no one's allowed in there. It was hard for me to get in there and see my daughter when she was at King's Daughters. And that aggravates me. That frustrates me. I think that's a bunch of bull crap. Okay. And I think that they're highly medicating these people because trust me, there were times going through this with Tara that I wanted to reach over and just shake the crap out of her because of what she's seeing isn't real, or to make her understand that if she could just accept some of the things that she, take credit for some of the things you caused, you'll start healing yourself. She don't want to go nowhere near that. Oh no, I did nothing. I've been sober for years. Like the lies. It's awful. And we all know better. And it's crazy how they are. So, okay. Anyways, I'm spiraling. Let's get back to the video.
People who are interested in psychiatry are not allowed in, and then they make it look like it's the most dangerous place on earth.
Uh-huh.
That's
by
true.
far, it's not.
I know.
For the most
it's
part,
not.
those people aren't going to hurt you.
No.
I mean,
And they don't want the patients to leave either. That's
No.
the other. They're not interested in getting the patients better. Definitely not in
No, they're
state-run
not.
psych wards, right? And some
Nope.
people never leave. If you don't have family and you're locked up in a mental institution, you can bet you're never going to leave. It's
Well,
really sad.
In the private ones, they're going to run out your insurance until it's depleted. Insurance won't pay anymore. Then they're going to let you out of there.
right,
Yeah,
unless
That's Lawrence County. That's the story of Lawrence County. When your insurance runs out, poop out the door. You're not here. Go to the next. Go down the street. There's another one. There's one on every block.
they can soak up Medicaid, if they can attach them with that, then they'll just keep that train
Yep.
going.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. State-run
Nobody's-
insurance at a state-run facility.
Keep that train going, Lawrence County. Woo woo.
Yes.
So they're basically just drugging people silly and controlling them. Nobody's recovering.
Nope.
No.
They leave with medications to drug themselves more.
Yeah.
And I'm also convinced that mental institutions are also creating the problem.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you lock a sane person up in a mental institution, they will inevitably become mentally ill, or what we perceive to be mentally ill.
Yeah.
Well, not, but they would not necessarily. Matter of fact, I have a fella who spent 8 months while he was sane in a state mental hospital in San Antonio. Now I can bring him on too, and he can tell you about the experiences, what he experienced there as a sane person. When he first entered, he wasn't, but he snapped out of it. But yeah, they just drug people silly. They just line them up and they just drug them, just so they don't have to deal with them.
I'm sorry. And
Go
a
ahead.
lot of people too, they're empaths, but it's not something that is socially acceptable. And that's why I
Exactly.
kept my mouth shut, because I didn't want to be admitted, oh, gee, I
Uh-huh.
see dead people, I mean,
That's me, guys. That's me. I've battled my whole life with this gift because I don't want to be seen as an insane person.
you can't just walk around and say that. And so what Sherry's saying is very, very true. Yeah, you've got to be careful. At this day and age, a lot of people are empaths and they have never had that supported. And in a lot of people's lives, traditional religion plays a part in kind of squelching that.
Mhm.
Everybody's born with gifts. They just either have the opportunity to have them supported and they flourish, or they're dubbed out. And I would say 90% of people in this world aren't connected in with that ability. And when you get one that is, they become afraid of it, and they end up putting them into places like that. So
It's
which is
flip. They've been taught their whole life that that's not real. It's not supposed to happen. And then all of a sudden, something like that happens, and say it's a good energy coming in, maybe even your guide, and you flip out because you ain't never had nothing like that happen. And you've been told your whole life that it's not possible, that that's wrong, that's evil. So what do? Oh, you freak out, and then you create a split automatically. And it's crazy. It's the shock factor. I know my audience has been through things in their lives. Think back to a time when you were told something so shocking that your knees buckled. And I know you all have had at least one experience like that. That's the feeling you get the first time you realize that the unseen is communicating with you. Just saying.
the case of also a young girl, the young girl that had approached me and said, "You can help me. I know you can."
And what happened? Well, yeah, definitely. The history of mental institutions and mental asylums in the United States are crazy ridiculous, and Jerry maps that all out in his book. It used to be that you could just go and drop your kid off at a mental institution. You could drop your wife off. A husband that wants to get rid of his wife, they can be like, "Oh, she's crazy. She's not well," and then they would just lock her up.
That's
Just get rid
true.
of her like that.
They actually had a section on the fourth day that I was there. I was taken to a section where the people, one of the nurses said that these are people that the families don't even bother come to visit anymore, because
That's sad.
they're basically
Award of the state. That's sad, guys. That's gonna be my daughter. I mean, if I would have never found her, or if I lose touch with her again, I'm still waiting to see a judge. And she went to another rehab, and she wasn't supposed to be put in another rehab, but they say it's not a rehab, but the only patients there are people that have psychosis from methamphetamines. I've read their pamphlet. It's all about drug therapy and rehab, but it never says it's a rehab. It even says in their mission statement they are not a rehab. So I think they are supposed to be a shadow rehab, maybe a therapeutic community or whatever, but it's not right because they're using the medical card for that time. putting a band-aid over top of a patient that has psychosis. I just wonder what their success rate is. I just wonder. Something to maybe check into. I might make that phone call and see what I can find. All right, so let's get back to this.
Basically crazy. And in this setting, there was a woman that was sitting at a round table with 4 chairs, and she was having this conversation. I mean, they were ghosts. They were spirits in the chairs. And so she's the only embodied person sitting at this table, and she's having this conversation between all 3 of these spirits and her.
That would be my daughter. She's always having a conversation with more than 3 or 4 people.
And the thing was, it was like she was on a telephone, and you could hear her conversation making sense, but you couldn't hear the response of the other person. But you could kind of get the gist of what they were saying by the way that she responded.
See, and that flies in the face of the psychiatric mafia, who's saying these things are hallucinations. Hallucinations are random. They're all over the place. It's like word salad. No, they're carrying on coherent, well-organized conversations with these entities, and these entities are speaking back to them. They are not hallucinations.
That's very, very true. And the thing about it is that the nurse was saying, oh, that's so-and-so. She's talking to people that aren't there again. And I'm looking at the table and I'm like, oh, no, she's not. She's got 3 people sitting with her. She's having a full conversation with 3 people that are, in fact, sitting there. You just can't see them, but she can.
And in her mind,
you couldn't open your mouth.
But I couldn't. No, I couldn't open my mouth. Like I said, I didn't want to be.
Yeah, and you don't want to make it like, you don't want to sit there. I would look at it like that too. She has some people she's talking to because they are in a real conversation. They are really seeing someone. They are really communicating with someone. Whether it's in their mind or their reality or whatever, it's real to that patient. So it should be treated as a real occurrence.
Admitted, let's leave that one there. But if you'd like me to tell you the story about the girl that approached me, I'll be happy to do that.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, absolutely. We have all the time in the world, so you can speak about whatever you want to speak about. Yes. Tell us about the entity that was attached to the girl. Yes.
Okay, and as a matter of fact, one thing that I did notice walking around is that there were people there with schizophrenia. There were people there with addiction issues, and the attachments are different.
They're different.
So,
did you catch that? Addiction has attachments that are visible, entity attachments. Wrap your head around that one. She even says they attach on the spine or the shoulders. Where do drug addicts feel the most tension? When they're coming down off of something or they're in detox? Ding, 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 ding. Exactly. That kind of made sense. But I'm not saying, oh, that's why. That's the, an entity made me do it. Which it could be. It could very well be. However, in reality, I'm the one that did it. So.
The young lady, of course, we were ushered out of the room, and then I got placed back.
Yeah, you go saying that shit. You're locked up for good.
In that area, the intake area, along with one other nurse. And we were sitting there. They had picnic tables that were bolted to the floor. We were sitting at the picnic tables doing our charting because we had our patient assignment. And our patients, they have these periods of time where they'll go into, not like classes, but they all sit together as a group. And then there are other times that they'll meet with their social worker or the psychiatrist to talk to as well. But they constantly usually have something going on that they have to go to. So in my patient at that time had gone to theirs. Mine was somebody that had attempted suicide, so it was a little bit different. But this young lady came over and she sat down with us, and she was sitting I was sitting with my legs on the chair facing the table, and she sat down with her back to the table. So her legs were off, coming off of the side. And she's covered in these marks. She's got claw marks all over her. The claw marks look like cat scratches. They're thin, just like that. And the thing is that she had kind of started to tell me the story, and the other nurse the story about how she had been molested by their minister from the age 10 to like age 14, and then her mother got remarried.
Okay, though, here's the thing about that. My daughter says all the time that she was molested, or someone was molested, or she accuses us of molesting. Stop doing that, cat. So sometimes when they are really sick, they will have a hallucination, and that is a demon, I believe, showing them that to divide them from their family. So.
And then her stepfather started raping her until she was 16. And it was this trauma. And she ended up running away. She ended up doing devil worship. And then she realized that wasn't for her. And she started hearing 25 different voices. She referenced that there was one. And the thing about the voices, a lot of them can be disembodied souls that have not crossed over, because we do have a choice to cross over or not at the time of death. But they're always controlled.
And this is why I said what I said when I did my intro video into this whole little series right here that I just did. That is why. That is why I said that at the very beginning, before I did all these. That's why. Because I think it could be possible that it is a disembodied soul.
By something darker. And she had made mention that one of them had a very long fingernail and was scratching her on the inside of her female parts, and that the facility was saying that they were self-inflicted. Prior to that, I had purchased a home in East Flat Rock, North Carolina, as a single mother with 2 kids, and it was haunted so bad, I never moved in. Unbeknownst to me, it was haunted. I didn't know it when I purchased it. I found out. I've got teams of witnesses and groups of people that I had come through there that either saw and or were touched or affected adversely by the spirits in that house. But at one point, I was in that house, and I'm mentioning this to say, to have people understand how I identified the claw marks on this woman. Is in the kitchen. I was standing with my best friend. She's holding something in each hand. We see this ectoplasm wall coming at us. Yep. And all of a sudden she starts screaming, and she ends up with a claw mark on her back between her shoulder blades, underneath her bra strap on her back, and also one on her stomach. Wow. That was caused by a demon that was coming in.
See, I don't think I've ever really been touched by one, but one time that I'm aware of. But one time. I was meditating, and I was communicating with Derek, and I was wanting to know if he was able to touch stuff or reach up, and that probably was too far, right? I was wearing a purple coat. It was real cold outside with a hood on it, and I was sitting there with a little kitty on my leg, and all of a sudden she jumps. She's scared. Something scared her. She seen something that scared her. She jumped, got down. And I went, oh, what was that? And all of a sudden, boom, something hit my hood of my jacket. Talk about scaring someone. I jumped up and ran. I was like, oh, I get it. I took off. Like, sorry, kitty. Hope you get somewhere safe. That was crazy. So, yeah.
Into the room with that ectoplasmic portal. So I recognized the claw marks being the same as the ones that I saw happen on my best friend while I stood next to her in that kitchen. So I'm thinking, oh my God, this poor woman, she's covered in claw marks. I could see it on her legs, and she had them in places that there is just no way that she could have done them at that angle to herself. There's just, she would have had to have been a contortionist. I mean, there's just no way to have reached at that angle to create those claw marks on her. And she was then called away. It was time for her appointment with her social worker or her psychiatrist or somebody. And she got up and she started to walk away. And as she got probably like 15 or 20 feet away, I'm looking, not even 20, probably more like 15 feet away, I'm noticing that she has these clustered grape looking type things over each shoulder, like she had a clear.
This is crazy. I think it's cool that she could see them. Now, I've been able to see auras and shadow distortions on people, but I never knew what it was. This is cool.
Like a clear single size pillowcase, but yet they weren't encased, but they were all kind of clustered together like that, like Santa Claus bags almost. And I'm like, oh my God, she really is hearing 25 voices. She's got attachments on her back. And after she had returned.
No, you're seeing this in the spiritual
Yes.
sense, in the spiritual realm, correct?
Yes,
Lynn,
as
do
a
you,
matter.
do you have the drawing?
You know what? I do. But I think, I'm sorry, it got moved. Let me look for it in just a few minutes for you.
Okay.
I meant to sit it here. And my daughter's birthday, it might have accidentally gotten moved. But what it looks like is they're about the size of potatoes. Some of the faces are inverted, so the mouth is on the top and the eyes are on the bottom. Some are sideways, some are upright like normal. And I say potatoes misshapen because, of course, they have no bones. So they were all kind of clustered together like grapes on her back, and they were attached to her shoulders with this horn, like hollow looking horn type thing that came in at the top of her shoulders and then clipped underneath her armpit. It didn't go all the way around. It was just at the top. So there was a little bit of a gap, and it was kind of a brownish tan color, kind of twisted like a horn. And that seemed to be what was clustering them together. So that's why I say they looked like they were clustered like grapes. When she returned from her appointment with her doctor, she went to her room, and I went to her down the hallway. She was just 3 doors down from my patient anyway. So I went and I knocked on her door frame, and she invited me in. And I said to her, I said, look, I said, if you repeat what I'm about ready to tell you, they're going to think that you're crazier, and they're going to keep you in here longer. So what I'm telling you, you need to not mention to anybody, but I believe that you are in fact hearing 25 different voices because you've got attachments on your back. And she's in that moment, I had been having some personal things going on in my life, and there is a preparation that goes with it before you just go taking attachments off of people, because you don't want them to attach to you and you bring them home. So you have to do certain.
That's very important. She is correct about that. That's one of the things when I started doing this that my guides had taught me while I was meditating for Derek. He was on life support. And that was the first time I had heard about guides and my guides, stepping in. I'd heard about other people communicating with their guides, but it never happened to me until he got on life support. And then I called them angels because they guided me through these very extensive, long meditations where I would imagine my energy being pushed through his chakras and through the earth and back through mine and back through source, creator. And they taught me first thing to protect yourself. You protect yourself. You protect your area. You have to cleanse your body you have to kind of get to 0 point to be able to deal with other energies or entities, because you don't want anything lingering or bothering you where there could be an open or a split where that entity can do something negative to you, or negative entities could come in, whatever. So you want to make sure that that's the part of cleansing when they tell you to cleanse and clean yourself. You're supposed to spiritually clean yourself as well, and spiritually protect yourself.
Things to protect yourself, and of course be in a space where you're not under a lot of stress, or even tired for that matter. You need to be fully alert and oriented and on par, like at 100%. So as she turned from me, something just overcame me, because I wasn't going to do it, and I just reached my hand up underneath those horn things, and I picked them up off of her, and they came off very, very easily. And she immediately turned at me, because they were starting to fall to the ground. I'm trying to stomp them into the ground. Some of them have rolled away. And she turns to me and she says, "It felt like you were pulling grass off my back." So she didn't know that I was taking them off of her back. I didn't tell her. I didn't ask her permission. I just, went ahead and did that. And she did feel it. She said that, like I said, it felt like hair coming off of her back. And I told her,
You do feel when you're dealing with energy and you're moving energy around, and the person is in that meditative state with you, say two people are doing this, usually the practitioner, the energy healer, and the patient. Well, when an energy healer is working with the patient, and that patient is in zero state, which would be 0 point energy, no worries, no thoughts, it'd be having a blank mind. It takes a lot of practice to get to a blank mind, but they would have to have a blank mind at that point, and then you go through and you push energy to certain chakras, and you pull energy, you turn energy, because I believe, let me think about this. If you imagine your chakras going clockwise, spinning up clockwise, that is pulling energy in. That's filling that, building that chakra. If you imagine it spinning counterclockwise down, that's pushing it out. So you're pulling with one way, pushing with another. One is a masculine spin, one is a feminine spin. Anyways, so there's a lot to that. She's right.
in that moment, I said, "Look, this is a temporary fix." I said, "Some of them have rolled away over by your bed. They can reattach to you, but I've gotten the bulk of them off. When you get out of here, you need to go and find someone that removes these things from you." I said, "You find a Catholic priest, find someone that, find somebody in the Latin religions that do this kind of thing, and have them, remove this from you." So
I don't know about a Catholic priest there, Lynn. That's a
Well-
little stretch, but I do 100% believe in energy healing. I've had it done on myself,
Mhm.
and for someone that
I 100% believe in it too.
really knows what they're doing and they're legitimate, out of all
Yeah.
the fraud people.
You can feel it. If they really know what they're doing, you can feel that energy move and pull, and it really works. They can even take negative things you need to heal and pull it up to the front. Okay, I want to try to skip to where she talks about her mother.
Of prisoners who were using meth.
Oh, no, that's good.
The-
Right there.
in a person's life, as well as their extended families, and even into the neighborhood, depending on how outrageous they get when they're under the influence. And I was also listening to what Jerry was saying. Those kind of sound like
Let's go back.
Started moving in on them from all over the desert. And then when they saw that, they freaked out. They jumped in the truck, closed the door, and locked it. And they were still watching them from inside the truck. Then this fellow said that the back of the truck went down like a 1,000-pound boulder hit the back of the truck, and the front jumped up. And I was going, boy, that's weird. I didn't think they could do anything physical. I thought they were like
Yes, they can.
spiritual things, and they couldn't do anything like that. So that got my attention. And he said they looked in the back of the truck, and the back of the truck was full of these things. There was a whole crowd of them in the back of the truck. And I asked him, well, what'd you do? He said, we drove out of there, almost wrecked a truck. I said, well, did they follow you? And he said, no, they didn't. So that was the only one that I've ever had that actually experimented with them to see what they could find out about them. But here's two different people, two independent persons, proving that they needed the meth to see them. Now, schizophrenics see them in their normal state. They can see the shadow people. It's one of the.
We got to go back on this conversation.
The shadows are man-made. They are created by the negativity that's caused by the addiction that the other spirits are feeding off of. That way they show up as.
But what you're talking about, meth is one of the most dangerous drugs out there. I've seen scores of prisoners who.
Okay, let's get back.
I don't have a degree in psychology and I'm not a psychotherapist, but it indeed seemed like a straight up hallucination due to drug psychosis. I mean,
Okay.
Person that had a combination of addiction and the diagnosis of schizophrenia.
Okay.
But yeah.
Yeah, and
So-
I really want to get into that as well, the addiction aspect of this. But really quickly, can you, whenever you see these entities and you can see these frequencies that are emanating off of these people that have paranoid schizophrenia, is that something that you can turn on and off, or do you see it just 100% by accident, or how does that work with you?
I can, that particular thing I can turn on and off.
Yes.
I mean, sometimes I'm walking through the grocery store and
It's a mood thing. Okay, when you get in, say, daydream mode, you see those energies, right? It's a really relaxed, calm mode, daydream mode. But when you're just going, like she's getting ready to say, you're going to the grocery store, and sometimes through peripheral, because you're concentrating on something, nothing else. Through peripheral, you'll see them or whatever, and you go to look in their phone. So let's listen to her.
walking past and I kind of see this tentacle thing peeking out from one of a person, maybe with an addiction that has like a spider looking archon on it, and I'm like, woof, don't want that to attach to me, because sometimes they will reach out and attach onto you just innocently in a grocery store. I mean, it's so important for people to keep up with their energetic fields and keep it clear and clean. And
exactly. My friend, he used to be one of my weekly clients. Like, well, he was every week we talked almost every day. He was 90% of my income there for a while. I made over $1,000 a week off of him. But then he still got out cheaper than paying online. Like, and that he could have went online and paid double, maybe triple, and got me. But instead, I hooked him up. So, but yeah, he used to say that. He was an airline pilot, and he said he picked up an entity in Georgia on his computer.
and keep it solid, because if you get a crack in the windshield, you're a candidate to be bringing something home with you that belongs to somebody else.
Now, the addiction aspect of this, because this is what I've seen a lot, and I worked in a mental health facility for around a year, and it wasn't a lockdown psych ward. It was like a voluntary program. But what I experienced was a lot of psychosis, more specifically drug psychosis due to meth.
Yep.
And mostly what I was dealing with was borderline personality disorder, bipolar disorder, and DID. But the patients would see things. They never spoke about hearing things. They'd always see things. Like I had a patient once pacing back and forth, telling me that there was a man in a hoodie in the backyard with a gun that was going to kill him, and that he could see him. And he was trying to convince me that he was there. And to me, which I don't have a degree in psychology and I'm not a psychotherapist, but it indeed seemed like a straight up hallucination due to drug psychosis. I mean, the behavior of these patients were very erratic behavior, and then he switched it up to that the neighbor was going to kill him and that the neighbor was spying on him, because when he'd walk around the backyard, a certain section would trigger the neighbor's backyard light, right? And this guy had never been here before. He was like from North Carolina or something, and the place that I worked at was in California. And he made it about the neighbors trying to kill him, and then he also said that the government was also trying to kill him, and that he would the government was listening to him through other people's phones.
Yep, that's my daughter.
So if you were anywhere around him and you had your phone out in his visible line of view, he would just freak out. And these were young people too, not older people. This gentleman I'm speaking about was around 30 years old.
Yep.
So how do we differentiate between a drug, psychosis, schizophrenia, and the entities? Because they all seem very similar.
They do see
They-
similar. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they are. The meth addicts, what they see to start with is, they call them the shadow people.
Hmm.
Okay, they're three-dimensional dark shadows that are darker than the rest of the room. If they see their eyes, the eyes are either lime green or red.
Hmm.
Okay,
We always heard about the shadow people. My generation knows about the shadow people. Yeah. And that's not from doing the meth that these kids do today. The meth these kids do today, it's gross. It's nasty. It's all gross. All the drugs are gross, nasty. You know? But what can you do? There's people that are addicted to the shit. What can you do?
they're demonic entities. They never physically hurt anybody, but they scare the bejesus out of them. They can walk through walls. These people wake up and these things are standing at the foot of their bed or watching them or looking at them. But what you're talking about, meth is one of the most dangerous drugs out there. I've seen scores of prisoners who were using meth, and they started having hallucinations, just like a schizophrenia. Here's voices talking to them, telling them rotten things about themselves, attacking them. And then when they come down, those voices disappear. So they're going, oh, that was just a hallucination. Now that may happen, 10, 20 times for another several weeks or months. And then one day, those voices don't go away. And they're just as psychotic as anybody in the state hospital. They're done.
So it's like opening up a doorway,
That's
up
exactly
a portal
right.
into their mind.
Opens up the portal and says, come on in and get me.
It
So
does.
there is no difference between a paranoid schizophrenic and a meth addict who has started hearing voices. It's the
That's
same
right.
phenomenon.
I
Right.
agree.
And a lot of times too, because we are on the third dimension and the other side is on the fifth, there is that fourth dimensional realm. And when somebody is taking mental altering medications or drugs that are altering their mental status, it can put them into that fourth where they are seeing things such as a man with a gun, because their body is closer to death than, how can I explain this? It's not that they're dying, but they are in a state of more closer to death because of the medication that they're toying with versus solidly alive, if that makes sense. And that puts them in that altered thought pattern that they are.
It is so true. Sometimes that happens when you get real sick. Have you ever been real sick? Real sick, so you feel like you're floating outside your body, right? You don't feel attached. Same feeling.
Are seeing things, and like Jerry said too about the shadow people, the shadows are man-made. They are created by the negativity that's caused by the addiction that the other spirits are feeding off of. That way they show up as men with hats, they show up as snakes, and they show up as these ovoid fluttering things that go across the floor, and they get larger and larger as the negativity that is exhibited from the person's addiction and the people around them that are suffering also because of the rippling effect of the addiction that the person has, that they create the.
Okay, so that's what I think happened. My daughter was saying hanging around last year out here. She was starting to use drugs again. We were telling her, trying to hold her accountable. She was denying it.
These things, and that's why they then also see those things when they are not.
We knew it, and she kept getting more negative, more negative, more negative. Then one night, I kept hearing this thing run past. I say thing because it was a disembodied spirit running past my bedroom window screaming, Mom! And I got up in the middle of the night because I heard it. And I thought, man, it's the middle of the night. It was so cold that night too. It was like below zero. So I cracked the window and put my camera out because I'm going to try to film whatever it is. And all of a sudden it runs by and I hear it screaming, Mom, as it's going by, but there was nothing there. It stopped my heart. I jumped back. I was so scared. I was scared to death. Oh my God. So I was like, I was even scared to go back and shut the window, but I was afraid if I didn't shut the window, it would get in, right? Like whatever that is going to get in if it wants in. So I went, shut the window, and grabbed my cross with Jesus on it and forced myself to go outside and tell that spirit in the name of Jesus Christ, go away. Because I felt like that's what it was. Her drug use and her negativity, because she was talking about killing people all the time. She was talking about being an assassin. She was talking negative stuff all the time, hurting people, killing people. God telling her to assassinate people. She had a $5 million tag on you because she's a Russian agent. Like, it was scary. Killing kids. She was talking about that. Like, it's sad. It was really sad.
On the medication.
Well, and also sleep deprivation, because that's what
Yes.
meth normally does, is it creates a sleep deprivation. If you're up for a really long period of time, you start to see things that aren't really there, which, I mean, people do hallucinate, right? But figuring out what's a hallucination, what's real is a different story. And also figuring out what's real, what's a hallucination, and what's a drug psychosis, I'd imagine, is also.
I think it's a bleed through. I think when you open the door, you're already kind of bleeding through to the other side. Like Lynn was explaining, you're getting close to that side. So you could have a hallucination, but it's a bleed through. It's like all of a sudden this other reality is starting to peer through the veil. I think that's what it is. And so I think they're all the same.
Very difficult as well. See, my personal belief, and this isn't backed up by anything because I'm not a doctor, but it seems to me that drugs are responsible for a lot of this, when it used to be just plain old trauma. And now you have heavy drugs mixed in with trauma, which is not a good mixture at all.
No,
Right.
it's not.
Now, I did have in the prison, I had one patient who actually experimented to try to find out what the shadow people were. So he was a long-term meth injection addict. And he told me that he did this experiment one day, and I was all ears. Okay, tell me about it. So what he did with a friend of his, both of them were meth users. They wanted to see if they both saw the same shadow person or not. So they brought their needles, their meth. They went out to an Indian reservation south of here in the middle of nowhere at night down a dirt road. And one of them injected, and he started seeing the shadow people. So he would ask the other one, "You see that one over there by the tree?" And the other one said, "No, I don't see them." So he's pointing them out as they appear to him, and the other guy couldn't see any of them. So when the other guy injected, he started pointing them out to the first guy, and the first guy goes, "Yeah, I can see him." And they're asking each other, "You see the one over there?" "Oh yeah, I see him." "What's he doing?" "Well, he's doing this." They came to the conclusion that they were both seeing the same ones. So here's two people seeing the same phenomena over and over and over again. Now, one thing they did is and I've heard this from
like a
numerous,
hallucination.
if they see that you can see them, they start closing in on the person who they know can see them. I've never talked to anybody who stayed there long enough to tell me what they did once they got there. Everybody took off. So what these guys were doing is standing out there in the desert by the truck.
Okay, I want to go and see if we can get Lynn's story about her mom.
Why record podcast on Zoom?
When you could use Riverside.
I might
Switch to
try
Riverside.
Switch to Riverside. We might try Riverside.
Anyway, I went in with all of what I knew to do. I went in with literally with fire, and because the fire component that I use sucks in the air, and if there are spirits in the room, they're given the option to leave. If they choose not to leave, they're
Like, they might tell you to, hey, smack the guy in front of you, or
Maybe that's what Tourette's is. Tourette's is
verbalizing on this side. So George told her what color shirt the son had on, and she relayed that. And the son immediately got it. She had her tight little 1980s curly perm, and it even presented in her glasses, and she had the leisure suit on that she had made for herself. And she walked into the room, and she went to my mother's.
Okay, there it is.
Keep up with everything that was going on. So, and this was apparent because she would, when people would come in the room, she would move her eyebrows up and down and try to of my cat if something happens to me. And everybody's like, oh, no, don't talk like that. And then the next day they cross over. My mother herself was going around the facility that she was in at the time, and she was telling people that she was going to go home tomorrow, that she was crossing over. As a matter of fact, she even told a lady whose dog had passed away just a couple of days before that she would keep an eye on her dog for her on the other side until the lady could pass over and get there. And sure enough, my mother passed away at around 1:30 the very next day. My mother was transferred to hospice. They called us, said that it was she was starting to transition, and I went to the facility with my son and got there just pretty much in time. My mom was kind of in and out, and I stayed with her that evening. My brother was on his way trying to get there, and he wasn't able to make it in time. And then I had to leave to take my son home. But when I returned by myself. And as I'm sitting there, my mother was no longer able to open her eyes, and she wasn't able to verbalize anymore. She had lost her swallowing reflex and everything. That's usually one of the first things to go physically when this starts to happen. But she, and just to back up a little bit, sometimes people choose to leave early and they just leave the body there to finish, like my sister did in June. She left about 35 minutes before her body actually finished. My mother chose to stay until the last minute. She wanted to keep up with everything that was going on. So, and this was apparent because she would, when people would come in the room, she would move her eyebrows up and down and try to move her mouth to verbalize. And it was appropriate. People would come in and say, hi, Phyllis, and then she would stop. So as I'm sitting next to her, and I'm kind of speeding this up just a little bit, I'm sitting in a recliner next to her chair. Opposite of her bed, this ectoplasm or plasm started to form kind of a misting in the room, and I could see.
See, that's what I see every time. It's a swirl. It comes in from the right side every time. Every time. Right side of my eye frame. Ectoplasma, it looks like a mist. And it swirls, it does its thing, and that's how I know something's there. Every time.
Movement on the other side. I could see a shoulder peek out or a pant leg peek out. And yes, people, they do show up in clothes. Nobody wants to see mom naked meet you there at the pearly gates. I'm just saying pearly gates, but most would be like, Mom, get some clothes on. You know, it wouldn't be a joyous time to be greeted by your mother or father naked. So they do show up in clothes most of the time. I've only seen one naked ghost, and that's in another book that's just finishing editing as well.
Now, whenever you see these, whatever you would call them, possibly angels or whatever it is that they are they at their like prime state of their physical body, or are they as old as they were when they died?
You will see them the way that you remember them last.
Yeah.
However, the median age in heaven is around 30, 35. So that's when we're considered in our form when the body.
Yeah, Derek looked good. He looked really good. He looked young and happy and healthy. Yeah, not like he did when he died. Not like the last time when I seen him either. He looked really good. I know Sissy was the first to see him. She was 18 months old, and she was blowing kisses at him and I love you, Dilwick, and he's so beautiful, Mimi. She kept saying that. So that was cool.
It gets to its peak of an age, and physically at about 35, then it starts to decline age-wise. So we technically are in our 30s on the other side, but you will see them the way that you remember them last. As my mother was laying there, again, she was also at a slant. The end towards her bed started to efface, and I saw my mother's mother, my grandmother, step in, and she looked the exact same as I remembered seeing her. She had her tight little 1980s curly perm, and it even presented in her glasses, and she had the leisure suit on that she had made for herself. And she walked into the room, and she went to my mother's bedside, and she started to stroke the inside of my mother's forearm, and she would lean forward to my mother and say something in my mother's ear, and my mother would respond with the eyebrows and the mouthing thing as my grandmother would stand back. And then my grandmother went forward again 2 other times in addition to this, 3 times total, and my mother was responding. And behind my grandmother, I could see this frantic wave, and my sister's
cute.
perfume filled the room.
Yeah, that's another thing. Sometimes if you don't see them, you will smell them. Derek loves to smoke. He loved to smoke weed. And I will always, when I'm outside smoking and meditating, there he comes. I know that's one of the things he loved. But I'll be out there, and if I think about my aunt or something, the perfume comes through, or flower smells come through.
Youngest sister was murdered by a jealous boyfriend when she was 20, and she was frantically waving. And like I said, her perfume, she had an unusual perfume that she wore back in the 80s called Latisse, and she presented into the room, and she actually came around the misting and embraced me. I could feel her hair falling over my face. I could smell her. I could feel her essence. And when she went to go,
and you can feel it if they try to embrace your face, you'll feel like a whoosh across your face or a touch. Animals. I feel sometimes the dog that we had brush up against my leg.
go back around, the whole wall had effaced, and there were hundreds of people in there, and there were also some beings there.
Sorry, I've interrupted so many times, but this is a beautiful
looked
story.
like they were from somewhere else. And this is where I try to explain to people that are into the galactic thing versus the spiritual thing that it's all connected.
Yeah.
We've got to
Everyone
figure that we
shows
are
up.
made of energy. And if you want to go from a scientific place, you know, energy can't be created or destroyed. And when we leave our bodies, we don't die, we just shed and go, but our energy has to go somewhere. And you've got to figure that with as many sunshines out there, there are stars out there, that there are suns for other solar systems, that it would be ignorant to think that we were the only ones. There are other life forms in other solar systems maybe even people just like us. But when my mother passed away, I'm sitting there. I told her, I said, Mom, Graham and Robin are here. It's time for you to go. And she mouthed at me and moved her eyebrows up and down. I kissed her, I told her I would be okay, that I would see her, soon. And that's another thing too. If people could imagine death not as with the finality that they think of it as, but they will see their dog, they'll see their mother, they'll see the person again. This is not the last time that you're going to see them. They kind of look at it more like going on a long vacation versus a death, because you will see them again. And yes, pets do cross over as well.
Yep.
So
now some people, Lynn, think that the reason that people see these visions and these their loved ones and stuff is because of the release of DMT in the brain among death.
well, I wasn't the one dying, and I was seeing it too. I'm not dead. I'm hopefully not anywhere close to being dead. I'm relating what.
Shaboom. All right, guys. Exactly. He was trying to be a skeptic, though, and be like, hey, guess what? I heard it was the release of DMT. No, because I've seen it too. So, anyways, guys, Ryder's awesome. Ryder Lee, thank you again. I will message you later and thank you for letting me use your videos. He didn't actually personally let me, but thank you for posting your, the information that you have found. This is very educational. This is for educational purposes only. I wanted you all to hear that so that you understand that there are many people that have experienced the other side of the veil, and that it can even be experienced or explained through mental illnesses or things that are unexplainable and paranormal and the such. So we have seen both sides now. We have seen that there could be negative energy attachments, and we have seen that positive energies come to receive us when we cross over, and that we do not die. There's many stories about that. Also, there's a good channel. That's always the Afterlife Files. It's always about after. It's about stories like this, out of body experiences, and shared death experiences, which is what Lynn Monet had with her mother. So there you go. That was Lynn Monet, Jerry Marzinsky, and Ryder Lee on Raised by Giants. I will put their information in the description and the links like I have done the other videos. This is the last one. It was probably the longest. I hope you stuck with me. You probably didn't. But if you did stick with me this far, thank you very much. And please be the reason someone believes in good people, and have a great day. See you on the next one.